Welcome and thanks for joining me for another episode. This one I'm going to talk about proportions, and this is a big problem with a lot of beginner artists, and it's tough for me sometimes too. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do. This is the aspect of drawing that is really difficult and that makes drawing hard. This is what makes it hard. So proportions, what do we mean by proportions? Well, I have two objects in front of me here. I have a lemon, a piece of fruit, and I have a cup. The cup's a lot taller, the cup's a lot wider than the lemon. So if I'm drawing these two objects, proportions, let's find the starting point. So we have a cup that's kind of, I'm going to draw these small. So you have the top of the cup, and it kind of, these are going to be quick sketches. So the cup is something like this, has a handle, comes out and down. So that's basically the shape of the cup. Now, the lemon, now since we have this cup in place, roughly, we compare the lemon to this cup. That's how you get the proportions of the lemon. So we assume that the cup is correct. Once we assume that this cup is correct, let me use a darker pencil here so you guys can get the see what I'm doing here. So we have this cup, and assuming that it's correct, now we can measure the lemon compared to this cup. So the lemon is, half the height of the cup and probably the same width as this cup. So we try to just make those as close as possible. Now you can measure these if you want. You can go, okay, the width of the cup is this long, and so I need to make the lemon that wide. And there's the lemon. Maybe it's a little taller. So that's the basics of proportions, is that you're comparing two different objects, but there's also proportions within each object. This cup has proportions, this lemon has proportions. So the proportion of this cup, let's think about a different object, a different kind of cup. Maybe one cup is 2 inches wide, but it's 3 inches tall. So it's actually taller than it is wider. So you could say this is 3 and this is 2. So if that's real life and you're going to draw that, you have to draw that cup proportionally. So if I'm going to draw this cup smaller, I have to make sure that it's taller than it is wider. So if I'm going to draw it even smaller, I got to make sure that it's proportionally the same distance. I hope that makes sense. So you have to be proportional about it, and that's where we get proportions from. So if I drew this the wrong way, I would draw it a lot wider and shorter. That's obviously not the correct proportions compared to these two. This one is not right. So that's the basics of proportion when it comes down to it. So when you have a lot of objects, say you're doing a still life, a fruit still life with a bunch of different fruits and a cup or different objects, you have to compare. You have to draw one that's the right size, and then everything is related to that. It's just like painting. My channel is mainly about painting. So if you watch some of my videos about painting, you'll know that when you start a painting, you put down a value or a color that is as correct as possible. And then the rest of the painting and the rest of the colors and the values rely on that first stroke you put down. It's kind of the same with drawing. So drawing, you want to make sure that the first object or the first size that you create is going to be correct. So now if I drew this lemon much larger, like this big, and the cup this big, it's not in proportion. It's not going to look right. Something's going to be off. Now when you're dealing with, let me go to a new page here. When you're dealing with like faces and humans and things of that nature, all the same still applies. you have to get the eyes the right size, the nose the right size compared to the eyes, compared to the mouth, compared to the head. If you get these things wrong, it's not going to look right. If you're drawing buildings or a landscape, everything has proportions, and it's not an easy, sometimes it's not an easy thing to get down. But the way to go about it, the easiest thing you can start out doing is to start out with a sketch. You know, like I said, if I'm going to draw a face, I want to be able to, what I don't want to do is draw the eyes, right? And then draw a nose that's too far down. And then have the mouth here. You know, obviously the proportions, it's wrong. Something's wrong here. It's not going to look like a realistic rendering. It's going to look kind of cartoony. Something's going to be off about it. You know, I don't want the ears to be really large. So I have to look at the other elements and go, okay, how large will these ears be? Well, probably something like this is going to be better than a large ear. So you have to understand proportions. Okay, the nose would probably be up here, and then the mouth would be here. That's probably better proportions. So you have to look at your subject. You can measure using if you're working from a still life or something, you can measure using your pencil and your arm and your thumb. And when you do that, you want to compare two lengths to each other. So let's say I'm drawing this cup again. Let's say, okay, I'm going to sketch it real quick. So I have, and let me start smaller. So I have the mouth of the cup, and I'm not sure how tall or how wide it's going to be. Now I kind of just made up the mouth, but you know, how far down do I have to go? Well, I've already established the width that I want. So now I need to take the measurement of that width and then compare it to the actual height of the cup. So I need to measure the width out and then compare it. Okay, how tall is it? If they're the same length, if the width and the height are the same length, it's going to be somewhat like a square. So I'll have the cup in kind of a square shape. And then from there you find out, okay, the handle is up here, and then the handle connects down here. So proportions, it can be simple, but it is tough to get it correct all the time. Measuring is going to be your best friend when it comes to things like this. You're going to want to measure, and you're going to want to get compare two things, the width to the height of an object. And once you get those correct, then you can compare the rest of your scene to that object because you know that object is correct. I hope that makes sense. It can be difficult to understand, but you know, so you want to compare the height of something to the width. But anyway, so if you're drawing like a face, you kind of want a good way to begin is to start with the eyes, and you want to get the shortest distance. You know, some way to think about it is to get the short distances correct, because short distances are easier to measure compared to longer distances. So once you have these short distances correct, you know, how wide are the eyes and between the eyes, and then you can start, okay, you could say, okay, I got all this correct. Now I can just relate the rest of everything. Okay, where's the edge of the head? How does this distance from the eyes to the edge of the head to the ear, how does that relate to the eyes that I've already measured correctly? So now I can just say, okay, it's shorter than the length of an eye, so it ends here. And then now I can compare all this to where's the end of the nose, where's the mouth. So you start comparing everything. It's very relative. You know, you do that same thing if you're drawing a lemon, or you're drawing a cup, or you're drawing both of them in the same scene. You want to say, okay, I got the cup completely correct, or at least I got the height of the cup correct. How tall is that lemon compared to the cup? Well, the lemon comes up to about halfway of the cup. So we draw the top of the lemon there, the bottom is the same area. Now I want to find the width of the lemon. how does the width of the lemon compare to the width of the cup or the height of the cup? You know, the lemon is a little, you know, 3/4 the width of the cup. So you figure out, okay, 3/4 the width of the cup. You measure that out. Okay, here's the size of the lemon. So now you have two objects that are pretty in proportion, and you have a scene. You can start drawing the scene now. But to start out, before you jump into your final drawing or your final rendering, you might want to sketch these out on a smaller scale, get the proportions down in a smaller scale, and then slowly size that up to a larger drawing, to a more final drawing. So that's a good idea as well when it comes to proportions, like drawing, someone figuring out a portrait, as I was saying earlier. Portraits are like going to be really tough because there's so many little measurements going on, and if you're off just a little bit, you're going to know. People will automatically can just pick up on it. For some reason, humans are really good at picking up on these small little mistakes. So if you're drawing a face, it's going to be a lot more crucial to getting those things correct compared to like something like a lemon. Most lemons, I mean, we know what a lemon looks like, but I can be off a little bit if I need to. I don't have to draw a lemon perfectly because they're all different shapes and sizes. But when it comes to like a portrait or something, you got to make sure that you get the eyes correct. If you're drawing for a likeness, you have to make sure you get, once you get the spacing of the eyes, then you just, you find where the eyebrows are, you find where the bottom of the nose is, the edge of the nose, the mouth, and then you can draw the head. But you may want to start out with a sketch, you may want to start out drawing the shape of the head, and then figuring out, okay, the eyes are about halfway, the nose is here, and just try to figure it out that way, because sometimes if you're drawing a face, you'll start with the inside and you'll draw the eyes so big that it's not even going to fit on your page. You have to make sure that you're actually, when you go to draw it, that it's going to fit on your page first. So sometimes, one last example here, and we'll go back to the cup and the lemon, because that's a good way to think about it. If I'm going to draw the cup and the lemon on this sheet of paper, I can't just start out drawing this cup really big, really large, because it's not going to fit on the page. So I have to make sure. So maybe I want to draw just little tick marks, little lines, like, okay, I want the top, I want the bottom of these objects to be right here. So this is going to be the bottom of these objects. And I want the edges of the objects, I want them to be here and here. So now that we have these two measurements, we have how wide the entire scene is going to be and where the bottoms are, we need to figure out, okay, how tall am I going to want this cup to be? And that also determines the width of the cup. I could actually just do the width of the cup, say, okay, that's going to be the width of the cup right here. So now the lemon has to be in proportion to that width. So if the lemon is the same exact width, then we just duplicate that width for the lemon. So now the lemon is going to be this wide. And see, we're actually shorter than we had thought, which is okay. So now everything's going to fit on this page. So now I can draw the cup here, something like this, and go, okay, that's my cup. Actually, it'd be a lot smaller because there's a handle on the cup. So we draw the handle. There's the cup. And then the lemon's going to be over here. So, that's just an example, but just starting out with these little tick marks, measuring out the top, the width of each object, and the height of each object, and getting those proportions correct, because that's what's important. You want to get the width and the height correct. So to start out smaller, okay, here's the bottom of the scene, and then, okay, I'm going to want the cup to be this wide. So, okay, you set yourself up. So you want the cup to be that wide. Now you have to figure out the height of the cup. And it's going to be proportional to the width. So now that you have the width, how does the width compare to the height, like I was saying earlier? Okay, since the width is that much, the cup is this tall. So now we make the cup this tall. Now we have a correct, proportionally measured out cup. Now we just compare the lemon to that. The lemon's this big. Boom. That's that's an easy way. You know, you can even do tick marks on that, say, okay, it's that tall, how's this width compared to that? That's an easy way to get the proportions correct in a scene before you jump into it, before you start putting down all these crucial lines and then going back and having to erase them, because you don't want to do that. So hopefully this video helped you out with proportions and just understanding what it means when you're drawing proportions, and how to kind of measure them out and get them more correct in your drawings overall. So anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Thank you for joining me. Take care of yourself. Peace.